Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. On today's show, me and my co-host Michelle Markham talk with a very nice young man who is a referee in England for the amateur leagues, and we'll talk about his journey to wanting to help the referees with their mental health and much, much more. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and I'll see you on the other side. See you there. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with my lovely co-hosts Michelle Markham and Nathan Sherratt. Did I pronounce your name right, Nathan?
You did.
All right. So, Nathan, I always like to ask my guests, tell me about yourself.
I think probably the best way to describe me is I'm a person who's on the spectrum, and I'm a business owner, and I run my own business, self-employed. I'm also a football referee, which is a massive part of my business. Working with officials of all sports across the world. Guys crossing the US like yourselves, in Australia, really in every continent of the world. And it's been a big part of the work that I've done. So 26 years of age now, set up my business 4.5 years ago. And it's something I'm really enjoying doing, really loving doing, and looking forward to talking about with you.
All right. So let's start off with, when were you diagnosed?
It would have been about probably 10, 12 years ago. I don't ever remember exactly. And I do think about it a lot, but I don't ever remember exactly when it was. What I do know is that it was when I was in secondary school or high school, as you may call it in the US. And I was doing my exams to finish, obviously being at school. And I knew that I needed extra time and I needed some support to help me get through the exams. And for me, it was a big opportunity to try and get that. And that was all it really was for me. It was a means to an end in terms of getting extra time for exams. And when I got the diagnosis, it didn't have any meaning to me. I didn't understand anything really about it. I actually feel as if I lived probably till I was about 21 years of age as a neurotypical person with slight differences, because I didn't know what it was to be autistic. I didn't understand how it impacted me. And it was a big challenge, but I think what my understanding is that I think you find that 80% of boys get a diagnosis under the age of 10. So I know that I was unique in that regard to be in my mid-teens at the time. But yeah, for sure, it was something that I didn't know a lot about until probably 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years after the actual diagnosis.
All right. So what are the kind of things you struggle with during your life, and do you still struggle with them?
I think that one of the things that I always knew that was a little bit different when I was a kid. I always knew that I felt. And I think that I was aware that I was a lot more anxious than other children. And what I found when I was young was that I could never sit in a traffic jam. Found that very anxiety provoking. Couldn't regulate my emotions in that situation. When people and things were not running to time and things like that, I found that really incredibly difficult. And that's something that I think probably I've learned to mitigate a little bit as I've become an adult. And I've had to work very hard at that. I think one of the things that I really struggle with more than anything now is around temperature. So obviously for me, we were discussing it before we started recording this. It's getting very cold now as we head towards winter in the UK. So for me, as a football referee, being outside, it's very difficult. I have to manage, what I wear under my kit. I have to manage the fact that sometimes I need to wear gloves and things like that because of how cold it gets. To be out on a football pitch or a soccer pitch, as you guys may call it. So I think that's probably my big challenge heat and around that type of thing in terms of what the biggest sensory impact that I have is.
You mentioned that, before you got your diagnosis, you lived very much as a neurotypical person. And I really resonated with that. I had a very similar story. I just wanted accommodations in college. I wanted extra time on tests, private testing space. They made me get the diagnosis. That was a requirement. I blew it off. And so it was so great to hear from someone else that they had such a similar experience. I haven't heard that before. So it was really a great thing to hear that I wasn't the only one to have that experience. How would you say you have changed your life since you got the diagnosis? What new accommodations do you put in place? How is your life different post-diagnosis than it was pre-diagnosis?
Well, like I said, Michelle, when I got that diagnosis, I didn't change my approach to life or make any differences until probably 4, 5, 6 years later, when I was 21 years of age, which is when I started my business. And the reason for that was that, like you say, it was a means to an end for me to get time in exams and things. And I continued that once I got that, just sort of continued as it was. When I was 21, I had a job, and I worked in an organization where the culture was really, really unsuitable for me. And I was very direct because I felt that I was drowning a little bit in terms of, I didn't feel I was getting that support that I needed and things like that. So after I left that job, which I only stayed in for 7 weeks, and it was my first ever job, first ever foray into employment, I made the decision that I was going to invest time in understanding my autism, because I'd had a number of experiences between getting my diagnosis and getting to that point where things hadn't been quite right. And the best way I can describe it is, if you think about old school televisions, so when you look at all the wires being tangled around the back of your television, and you got to untangle all those wires, that's what the process was like for me. It was like untangling a lot of wires. And I felt that for me to get an understanding of it was really the most important part. And I think that I'd started to understand why I was the way I was when I was growing up. My mannerisms, the way I felt about things, my perception of the world. And then I made a sort of a further decision to try and understand how I could be more proactive going forward in my life. And what I started to do was start to realize, some of the sensory impacts that I have, started to understand why I think the way I think, why maybe at times I've been very direct, understand why I become overwhelmed, why I can become anxious, and all of those things. So, for me, it was a big, awakening, really. And it allowed me to be a lot more comfortable. It allowed me to be the person I really am. And I think that over the past sort of 5 or so years, it's been a big boost for me. And I've learned an awful lot about myself, and I'm very, very happy with who I am, and also very, very happy with the opportunities that it's given me, really. Actually, I think I've become more rounded person, and I've had better opportunities to help people with neurodiversity since I went on that journey myself.
Now, Nathan, you say you're a business person. My question to you is this: would you suggest to those out there who are autistic that it's better to become your own boss and come up with something that they're passionate about than entering into a world of work where they have to report to somebody else?
It's a very, very difficult question. Very, very difficult question. And I think that the answer is that it has to be what you want to do, because I think that what you find is that some autistic individuals, the skills that they have are very, very useful in certain circumstances. And if they're allowed to work the way that they need to work, they can be very, very powerful and very, very effective within an organization. And they can be one of the most valuable kind of assets to an organization, if that's the case. I think that for a lot of people, it works really well to be self-employed if you have something you can be self-employed with, something you can do that you're really passionate about, that you love in terms of being self-employed. Because then you can be your own boss. You can work within the construct of the way that you want to do it in your business. But equally, you can also work away from convention. So you could do a lot of really good work at 9 o'clock in the evening, or whatever it might be, when you are your most powerful and your most sort of switched on and motivated and driven, and however you feel. And it also means that you can work in the best environments that you want to work in. So I think that there's a real it's very much dependent on the environment that you work in, the role that you do, and all of that kind of thing. And I think that what we're now seeing is a lot of people high in industry talking about the neurodiversity, less so autism, but certainly talking about the neurodiversity, and it's not been a barrier for them to get to the top. And it just goes to show that you can do it, but we need to see more people doing it, and more people showing themselves that how they did it, to make it more accessible. Top level industry, board level industry, people who can make a real difference in society, need to show that how it was done, how it's possible, and we need to make pathways for people to do it.
All right, Michelle, you got any questions?
I do. I'd love to hear more about your business and some of the strengths and challenges that you face as an autistic business owner.
I think that probably one of the biggest challenges for me was, where do you start? It's very, very easy to get overwhelmed when you think about starting a business. What needs to be done first? Do I need to get a website? Do I need to get business insurance? Do I need to I suppose start social media accounts and all those things? There's so much that you need to do when you set up a business. It's unbelievable. And where do you start? And I was very, very lucky. I had some support through being able to access it with the diagnosis, and that allowed me to then get some support to help me set up a business. And what that allowed me to do was to get switched onto, what do I need to be aware of? What are the most important things? Helping me sequence things, priorities. How do we manage the workload incoming? All of those types of things. And I think that what I've eventually done has been to actually build up routines. How do we do things? And then once you build those routines and you get used to being in those routines, it actually helps you to get to a point where you can kind of you're going through the key processes, and you need to try and repeat those processes so you don't miss something, or you don't miss an incoming inquiry, whatever it might be. And that then allows you to actually be able to be focused on the primary functions of the business, which is obviously to meet the needs of the clients.
All right. So Nathan, when did you know you wanted to become a ref?
It's an interesting story, really. My friend, his dad was a referee in the non-league game in England, semi-professional, and he said, do you want to do this? His son was my friend, and he said, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this course? And I was 15, 16 years of age, and I thought, yeah, I definitely want to do it, because it's much better than having to get a job in a shop and waste my whole Saturday when I could just go out on a Saturday morning and referee some football or soccer matches and be able to actually earn the same amount of money doing that. It seemed like a much better use of my time. So, and I was getting fit, and I was being active, and I was getting involved in football. So that was what allowed me to start it. And then I think I caught it like a bug. And then you get that passion, you want to try and build and get better. You see the challenge of trying to become better as a referee and getting involved in higher level games and being a big part of it. We have a big thing in England around the Premier League and all the professional leagues in England playing games at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. And I think that for me now, the big thing is being able to walk out to referee a football match at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, like they do at the very top level. You want to be able to be involved in that. It feels big. It feels like you're a part of something. It's massive. So I think that, that became latterly and now is the motivation for me is to be involved in the game. But certainly when I was refereeing youth football, and when I very first started, it was about getting that pocket money in and not having to work in a shop, really.
All right. Michelle, I think you had a follow-up question from the last question there.
Yeah. It prompted a new question though now. Nathan, would you tell our listeners about what exactly it is that you do in your business, refereeing, all of that?
What I do is I work with officials of all sports. So, rugby, football, cricket, American football, baseball, basketball, boxing, all of those things, referees, different types of sports on mental toughness, resilience, performance strategy, mental health. And that is the big part of the work that I do within the business is supporting them. And I work with elite level officials who are at the very, very top of their game, working on an international level, who do it as a full-time job. And I'm also working with grassroots individuals, newly qualified youngsters, teenagers who are just starting out, trying to deal with some of the challenges that, parents, spectators will bring. Everybody thinks that their son is the best thing since sliced bread. And that's a big challenge when you've got parents who are pushing big agendas like that. But it's also a big challenge to walk out in front of a massive crowd at an international level, big stadiums, paying crowds, big players, who earn thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars a week. So big challenges like that. And the other part of my business is working with neurodivergent individuals, quite often people who are in jobs. So I work with doctors, consultants in medicine. I work with trying to think of some of the clients that I've got at the moment, working with university professors, working with, people who work in supermarkets, just all sorts of different things that, different walks of life, neurodivergent individuals that I coach. So those are the two big parts of my business and the way that I work. I work with individuals on a one-to-one level. I work with individuals in groups. I go and speak at conferences. So one of the big conferences that I've spoken at this year was the Include Summit in Manchester, in the UK. I was talking, it was a sports-specific conference over 2 days. And I was part of a panel with an Olympic rower who was on the autistic spectrum, a film producer who's on an autistic spectrum, and two other people that work with organizations that support equality, diversity, and inclusion. And I also delivered a workshop there about autism in general and in sport. So they're big parts of what I do.
All right.
Amazing.
Amazing. Nathan, how did you decide to get into the mental health field?
So basically, it was more of a refereeing situation that actually brought me to this. So I was refereeing some youth football, many years ago, and I was doing a game, and there wasn't really very much in the game competition-wise. It was over as a contest because one team had scored significantly more goals than the other, and I just heard a shout go up and my sight line was blocked. And then when I became unblocked, I saw two players head to head, and one head butted the other one, and then he gave him a left hook with a punch. And the victim was on the ground, having a fit, having been assaulted. So it was fitting on the ground. And I had a decision to make. I was on my own as a referee at that stage, didn't have any assistant referees with me. And I had to look and think, do I go towards the victim or do I go towards the perpetrator? And I decided to go towards the perpetrator because a lot of parent spectators had come on to treat the victim. So I got him away from the area because I was very concerned that there would be a lot of fighting that would take place after this. And the police came and carried out inquiries, and the player was arrested and all of that kind of thing. And I had a real burst of adrenaline that got me through the day. But the next days I was having intrusive thoughts and flashbacks. And the support network for one reason or another was not there, and I didn't have it. So for me, it was really, really important that I tried to have that resilience within me to actually overcome it, because I could have just walked away and just given up on refereeing then. And I think perhaps younger, less experienced referees might have done that. And it became my mission then to think, how can we help referees to become more proactively prepared for psychological challenges like this? And it morphed into some of the well-being challenges that we have with referees. It morphed into some of the really, really difficult aspects of, making sure referees are, they need psychologically to prepare for, some of the abuse, well, frankly, abuse that they take. But then I was doing work with sports psychologists and things like that, develop a program of support for referees that would help with actually giving them performance tools to help them better. So I almost became a bit of a sports psychologist for referees, if you like. And that's what sort of the work that I've done since then has kind of morphed into.
All right.
Do you deal with rejection sensitive dysphoria at all? Because I would imagine that being a referee, you're going to be rejected constantly during games. How do you cope with that? Is that something you're challenged by?
Yeah, I think probably being honest, we all have different challenges, because when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. So I think that, I'm not personally affected by that. But what I do think is very, very challenging for particularly autistic referees that I've spoken to is, the constant criticism, and it's personal, but really it's a bit like being a police officer, I think. It's more the badge on the chest than actually who you are as a person. I don't think it matters. I think they only see the badge, they don't see the person. So I think that, from my perspective, one of these things that you're discussing there around that, it's a big aspect of what we have to do. But almost preparing referees for rejection is the biggest part of probably what I've got to do, because the fact is, half the time you're going to turn up and people are just not going to be having you. They're just not going to be having you. They're just going to think, this guy here, he's here to ruin my team's day. He's here to cause us problems and be a pain. And they don't understand that you're there to apply the laws of the game, and you want to do it because you want to be involved in the game, because you love the game. You've got to love the game to take the amount of abuse and rejection, like you say, that you're going to take over a period of 90 minutes. So it's a big challenge. And it's about being able to accept that you're going to make mistakes, which can be hard because it affects people. But yeah, I think it's a big part of what we do is trying to help people to accept that they're going to make mistakes, that they're human beings, that it's an inevitability, and that trying to provide them with the tools to bounce back from that, to be then on the front foot to say, right, that's gone, I can't do anything about it, can't change it, it's gone, it's past, it's over. What can I do to get the next one right? How can I get things right for the rest of the game, deliver the rest of the game successfully? So that's a big part of probably what I'm trying to do with the clients.
Nathan, what would you say your hyper focus is?
I think it's a very difficult question, that one. It probably is football and sport and or soccer, primarily because I think that my hyper focus is probably around knowing players in obscure levels and things like that, and have real interest in football or soccer, as you would say, in that regard. And I look into things a lot. I've got a very critical eye, I think deeply about things. How could we change things? How could that be done better? I'm not a fan of bureaucracy and red tape, which I don't think I'm unique in that regard as an autistic person. But you know, I always look and think, why do you do these things? Why do you go around in circles? Why do you have a meeting about a meeting when you could just shoot, say, look, this is what we think, this is what we want to do. You know, so I think there's certainly a lot of elements of that I really do. But I think that what I probably would say that I'm kind of hyper focused on is I'm very, very passionate as a person. And that I think that comes across, and I'm probably a little bit all or nothing. You know, when I love something and I'm really into it, I give it 100%, but probably don't give things that I don't enjoy as much attention as I probably should do. So the balance is probably not quite there.
You got any questions, Michelle?
Not at the time, not right now.
All right. Nathan, let's go back to football for a minute. Do you have a favorite team?
Yeah, I'm a big Newcastle United fan.
Okay. And I take it you go to the pubs and everything, and you become one of the hooligans and you root for your team.
No, I'm a well-behaved young man. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I think, you know, I think it's probably, I would imagine it's like American football in the US in terms of it's the main sport, the one that the majority of people go to. And I've seen the way that the fans are fanatical about college games. You know, you talk about young people, 40, 50,000 people. It's an unbelievable sporting experience. For you know, with all due respect, something that's not like the NFL. It's not the top level, but you still get so many thousands of people going there. I find that unbelievable. I think it's something that the US needs to be very, very proud of, that they can provide crowds and they're that fanatical about that. But it's exactly the same here about football. You know, you can go down 7, 8, 9 tiers away from the professional game and you still see crowds in the hundreds to come to games where, you know, really it's a very, very low level. But there's the passion for the game is such that it can do that. So I think, you know, for sure, it's something that we love it. It's like a religion.
All right. I have to say though, I find it amazing that even in the UK, you guys have your fanatical parents who want to jump in on the game and thinking they're, like you said, like their son or daughter is everything and all. I mean, it's just nuts to think that even in the UK, you have the crazy parents as well.
Yeah.
And you got to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that we have to try and help young referees to deal with, because I think it's quite hard for let's call them what they are, children who are 14, 15, 16 years of age. They're developing some huge life skills that are going to help them with their future careers when they leave school, when they graduate university, that kind of thing, that are going to take into the careers these skills that they've learned as referees in terms of working as a team, making decisions under pressure, all of those fantastic things that refereeing gives you. But you know, I think that we have to look at the fact that they are still children, and that when they get abused from the touchlines, it's child abuse and it needs to be called out for what it is. And so I do think that, you know, whilst it's important, it needs to be done in the right way. Because the youngsters, the young kids who are learning to referee very much in the same way that the children that they are refereeing are developing their skills as football players. So it's a full-on learning environment, inclusive of referees, not just for the youngsters that are playing.
All right.
Nathan, how do you think being a referee has changed how you are as a person? Do you think it's given you additional skills or changed how you interact with the world?
Absolutely, Michelle. It really, really has. I think it's given me a massive confidence. You know, and I've grown, and like I touched on the skills, communicating with people is really important. Managing people is really, really important. Being able to kind of have empathy for people, you know, because when you make a big decision against somebody, they're not going to be happy about it. But if you just say, I don't care, go away, all that, it doesn't really work. you've got to say, look, I understand it's not the right decision that you wanted to hear, but this is why I'm doing it, you know? So I think trying to do all that and having those skills and being confident and being able to go out there and do all that is stuff that I've really worked. And I reflect on the fact that I'm a trustee of a UK autism charity, and I've become had the opportunity, I should say, to chair a committee within the autism charity last week. And I was talking to a chair, another chair of within the organisation, who also chairs in the committee, another trustee of the charity. And he was saying to me that he was impressed with the confidence that I bring and the authority that I had and the way I managed the time, which is obviously the part of refereeing. I think it was a lot of skills that he knew I'm a referee, so he was saying that he felt a lot of skills that I'd gained from refereeing helped me to be a really good chairperson for that committee meeting on that charity. And it's something that I've actually had before I had the opportunity to chair the committee meeting. It's something that I've really, really loved to do, even since I became a trustee on this charity, because it's actually having the gumption or the feeling to step up and say what I think, because the charity is called Daisy Chain, and I would really encourage people to look up, and particularly UK-based listeners. And you know, I'm the first trustee for this charity to be on the spectrum, and it's an autism charity. So I feel like I'm the first ever person who can advocate for the beneficiaries of the charity at board level. So in terms of me speaking up and giving a perspective as a person who's on the spectrum about how might our beneficiaries feel about some of the decisions that we are taking, big decisions, huge decisions that have an impact on the support that they get, you know, it's a big thing. So I think, going back to your original question, refereeing has given me some fantastic skills to be able to come and communicate at board level and advocate and share my ideas at board level to help this charity be really, really successful. You know, as we work forwards, and I'm hugely proud to be the first autistic board member, and you know, I'm looking forward to having a long association with the charity and hopefully helping, you know, many generations of autistic youngsters who access the charity in the years to come.
That's awesome. It's so important that we have people on the inside in all of these charities and organizations who are autistic, who understand it, and who can speak for others from a place of knowing.
Absolutely.
Nathan, when you go out and you referee, or when you're out in public on your own, do you mask, or have you just foregone masking altogether and just said, screw it, I want the world to accept me as I am?
No, I think I do. I think quite often I go to meetings like board meetings at the charity, and I might be feeling a certain way, and I know it might sound a little bit kind of, I don't want to use the word backward, but it does sound a bit backward that I would do it in such a place, such as an autistic charity, that I would not be the way I am. But I think it's because I need to mask in order to be focused and switched on, and to be a confident version of myself. I don't think that I can manage it when I'm fully relaxed and, you know, perhaps I stim or whatever, you know, I get focused, and so I think that actually the masking allows me to kind of be really switched on, really, you know, driven, focused. But then I think what I do realize is that, you know, so for example, when I have a coaching session that's 2 hours long, I'm coming out of that and my head is like, whoa, you know, it's just because I've been switched on for 2 hours and I've been presenting myself as somebody else, masking. So I think, and I think it's probably unfair to say I'd be presenting myself as somebody else, but I think I'm presenting a different version of myself, is what I should say. So I think that, yeah, what I do find is that when I've done that, it actually does kind of have a bit of a toll afterwards, where I feel a bit more exhausted, a bit more, you know, worn out, and a bit really sort of sensorily, you know, exhausted. So I think there's that, but I think the one thing I don't think it actually stops me doing is, and I hope, like I'm speaking to you now, I hope that comes across, is being candid about my autism and being open and honest about it. I still don't think that it actually prevents me from doing that and speaking truthfully about the realities of it, which, like I say, before I was 21, I would have never done and never understood really even.
All right. Now, do you have ADHD as well, or are you just strictly autistic?
Yes, I'm strictly autistic. I've decided I need to stay in my lane in terms of autism. I can't stay over to ADHD. It's not a gift that's been bestowed upon me.
All right. My last question to you before the very last is, what is the autism scene like in the UK? I mean, have they been helpful to you with all your endeavors and everything else?
I think we have a long way to go. And it upsets me. I think if I came to power and I was the Prime Minister of the UK, I would want to make it more of a priority, and not just autism, also ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia. You know, all forms of neurodiversity need to have a greater level of awareness. And I'm 26 years of age, but even when I was at school, which wasn't obviously as long ago as maybe some autistic people who have a big profile, I still felt that it was used as a stick to beat people with autism. Certainly not understood. And I think we need to increase a level of understanding of what autism really is, because I think there's a general perception of, if you're talking about an autistic individual, you're talking about somebody who's non-verbal, who, spends a lot of time in sensory rooms, is unable to wash themselves, is unable to, kind of even communicate really. And the reality is that when I joined Daisy Chain as a trustee, and I went to the building that they use, I was 24 years of age, and it was the first time I'd ever been in a sensory room. So I think that just goes to show how, you can be autistic, but you doesn't mean you've ever even been in a sensory room, and I probably wouldn't have been in a sensory room to this day had I not become a trustee at that charity. So I think that speaks volumes for what it is. So I think we need to understand what autism is, and we need to talk about how can we make accommodations for people, which is probably a whole other podcast, Reid. But the reality is that accommodations that can be made for people in the workplace, at school, in various different environments, to allow them to be the best version of themselves and to perform at their optimum level.
Yeah, I mean, I had recently just talked with the assistant prime minister of Australia of autism, and what I can really say is they have pushed the bar on what is needed and what should be done to where the whole world is like behind them when it comes to help. And we need to follow suit. And you're right. I mean, a lot of these, I've talked with people all over, and they all say the same thing. They don't have the kind of resources that other countries have. Australia, especially, because they're way ahead of the game in what they do. And I think as a nation, we need to look to them as this is how we should do things.
I definitely agree with you, Reid, and I think that what we have to remember is Australia became the very first country to do mental health first aid training, and that has shown that much ahead in that, and they've always been very much ahead in terms of neurological, psychological, neurodiversity, all those aspects of unseen challenges. Yeah, so I think they have always been somebody that we look to. But one of the things I really struggle with, Reid, is that we live in a society where I feel increasingly many key nations like the US, the UK, are starting to become a lot more nationalistic, and are starting to become a lot more isolationist, where you are exactly right. We need to be reaching out to our partners and neighbours to look at what they're doing well and to work with them on that as well, to have conversations to say, you know, if I'm the Prime Minister of the UK and you're the President of the US, I need to be having a call with you to say, this is a key priority for me. How are you doing it, Mr. President? How can we work together to learn from each other, to develop together, so that we have two really important nations leading the way, you know, in this area that is really, really important, because we've got millions of our citizens that are impacted by neurodiversity, and we need to make a big you know, we need to make a big priority to support these citizens. So that's very much my thought on it.
I mean, I know when I was talking with the Prime Minister, she said they saw there are people falling through the cracks, and they were like, we can't have this. These are our citizens. We need to do something. And that's when this initiative of having the first assistant minister of autism came to be. And now she's talking with organizations all over, establishing policies, this and that, to the fact to now she's talking to the only 4 schools in the country, colleges in the country, saying, if you have people who want to become teachers in secondary school and in high schools, they need to go through autistic training so they know how to deal with autistic children. And then she went on to tell me the story about how this one kid was failing in this one school. His mother pulled him out, put him in another school, and now he's succeeding because he had a teacher who knew how to deal with autism, to the fact now he's selling popcorn in their petrol stations all over Australia.
That's an unbelievable story. And I have to share my own probably story around education, which is that, you know, when I was in secondary school, even with the added time that I spoke about in the exams, I still only got decidedly average grades, nothing special at all, just passed a lot of subjects. When I went to, you know, kind of sixth form or college, as you guys would call it in the US, I did continual assessment for all of my studies that I was doing there. And I got the top mark in all of the 3 subjects that I did in there. And that was because it was a process of continual assessment. So I wasn't the problem, but the way that I was being asked to almost express my qualities was the issue. And so that would be certainly one of the things that I would look to try and change, would be to afford really anybody, but in particular neurodivergent youngsters, a continual assessment way of kind of doing their qualifications right down from starting school to the end of university, because I feel that it's really, really important that people are allowed to express themselves and the qualities that they have in a way that they can do that best. I think exams are an absolutely terrible way of actually trying to evaluate the qualities of neurodivergent individuals, because of a lot of the barriers that they have.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on with that. So many of us are challenged by exams and traditional learning techniques, and, you know, we get labeled as being learning disabled, but what if these are really just learning differences? And maybe we can look at these as just different ways of learning, different ways of expressing ourselves, and just have some more understanding.
Absolutely.
Nathan and Michelle, let me ask you both a question. When I've been taking on-time testings in college, do you both have the same issue where when you see somebody leaving before you, do you panic like, oh gee, I don't want to be the last one here, I don't want to be the last person to finish my test while everyone else is done, and then you rush for your test and just hand it in?
I'll let you answer first if you want, Nathan.
No, I think that's a very, very fair appraisal. I think I always had that when I was at school. I never wanted to be the last one. And what I found really difficult was I have a lot of coordination difficulties, which is part of the reason why I wasn't a very good football player, but why I'm more involved as a referee. So I couldn't handwrite very well. So what made it worse for me was when I was trying to rush to write things faster. This was when I was a lot younger. I ended up using a laptop when I did my exams later on at school, but I ended up trying to write things faster, and it just became even worse. And I was left-handed as well, so we used to have to use fountain pens at school, and I used to have a big line of blue ink smudged all up the side of my hand because I was going back over what I'd already written in. So I ended up with loads of smudged just bits of paper that couldn't be read, and I was trying to write so fast that I used to get pains in my hands, and it was an absolute nightmare, complete and utter nightmare, absolutely terrible. And yeah, it was absolutely made worse by thinking that I was going to be left behind, which was a terrible thing for me at school. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I'm also left-handed. And yes, I would see people finishing their tests before me, and I would want to try and hurry and get out of there at a reasonable time. I never wanted to be the last person taking a test. And I was just laughing when you were saying all that, Nathan, because yeah, I always had a black smudge all along my hand, no matter what kind of pen it was, because I'm writing fast. And then the teachers would get upset with me for having illegible handwriting. And that was so frustrating because I tried so hard to write legibly, to keep up with everyone else. And I just needed those accommodations.
Yeah.
And I really didn't get accommodations until college.
What's funny for me is what doesn't occur to me is half the people in the room are taking different tests than I am. So they can finish before me because maybe they're taking their test is shorter than mine. I'm not thinking that everyone in the room are taking different tests. So that's why I panic. I'm thinking, oh, everyone's taking the same test. I need to rush. Anyways, Nathan, where can people find out more about you and your business?
They can do so by visiting the thirdteam.co.uk, and they can also follow the Third Team on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, and Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and they can also view me as an individual on LinkedIn. And I would really urge people to visit the website and to sign up to the blog. I write a new blog every week, on every Friday at 5 o'clock UK time. So what's that going to be? 12 Eastern. And obviously, I've been doing that now for over 4 years. And I've written probably about 215, 220, something like that, blogs every week consecutively. So yeah, would really, really look forward to engaging and hearing from people on social media, and hopefully people enjoy visiting the website too.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reid Miles, joined by Michelle Markham, and that was Nathan Sherratt. I'll see you in the next one, everyone. Thank you, Nathan, for being on the show.
Thanks so much.